Hello and welcome back to the Masterclass, the Tactical Podcast. My name is Haider Rob and I'm your host as ever. Today we're sitting here on Thursday, Rob. Manchester United lost 3-1 last night to PSG. Oh, difficult defeat to take. One which we would have been able to get ourselves to the knockout stages with really a draw, to be honest, Rob. But as we stand now, we're going into a difficult game next week against a good Leipzig side. But without further ado, Rob, how are you today? Welcome back. How are you feeling after sleeping on that performance?
I'm good, Haider. Thank you very much, mate. How are you doing? I thought the performance overall was okay, but didn't really tick all the boxes. So I feel obviously from the reaction on social media that lots of Manchester United fans are quite high on the performance. Because United created lots of chances, that they're pleased with that and that it was an entertaining game, and it very much was an entertaining match. But I think in terms of game management, and obviously this is what this podcast is about, when you look at the tactics and the setup, they were all fine, but the execution at times was poor or even less than poor. And I think that's just why the result was 3-1 at the end of the day, in a game that Manchester United dominated for spells, but didn't quite get over the line.
That's exactly what it's all about. It's all about the execution, planning and execution, which I think a lot of fans maybe don't differentiate, or they don't realize that actually just because the execution is poor does not mean the planning was poor. So that's what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be diving into both of those things. But look, for me, I just thought it was a night of what ifs for Manchester United. I feel like we're saying what if too many times, Rob. I feel like we're saying what if on a lot of games, and I don't think that's the right thing. I mean, when we're looking at today, Fred's stupidity for me was a big part of it. I thought Solskjaer's game management wasn't as good as it should have been. We saw against Southampton, he was praised for changing it early on. I don't think he did that yesterday. And then obviously with Martial's chances, missing that goal, which could have completely changed the complexion of the result. Now we've got a huge trip, as I said earlier, going to Leipzig, and United. Look, the first 20 minutes were a total mess for me, and I think you agree with that. I thought in other parts of the game we had long spells of control, but I don't think we can make our superiority count. People are saying it's a good performance. I'm not sure it's a bad performance, and we've spoken off air about it, but I don't think we were disciplined enough. I don't think we were tight and compact enough. And for me as well, it's off the ball where we've got problems. We don't press well enough, I don't think. I don't think we pass well enough. The simple passes, the retention of the ball. Disjointed for me, Rob, again, and same sort of things that we come back to. But would you agree that first 20 minutes was it was a disaster, to be honest with you, and it set the tone for the match?
Yeah, I think after that first 20 minutes, United were firefighting for most of the game, even during the spells where United dominated possession and were in the final third attacking PSG. I think what was evident in the first 5 minutes of the game is that Manchester United were treating the football like a bar of soap. Yeah, they couldn't hold on to it. It was slippery. They weren't concentrating on ball retention. Yes, they were closing down. Yes, in the first 5 or 10 minutes, it's easy to press because you're fit and healthy and you're ready to go. But United were giving away territory in an alarming rate in that first 5 or 6 minutes. And that gave away the first goal. That sets the tone. So I do think in the first half that United managed to switch it and managed to kind of get possession. I think after 25 minutes, the possession was 70%, 70-30 in PSG's favour. And at halftime, it was 50-50. So statistically, that shows that United went in the correct direction and got the game under control. It was a building block. However, in games like this, I will say you have to be perfect for as close to 90 minutes as you can be. And there were big spells in both halves, first half and the second half, where United really were anything but perfect. And this is the wider question, the aspect of execution. You know, is it tactical or is it players? As I said, at the start of the game, I thought United set up fine. You know, I'd said on Twitter before that I thought it would be a kind of 4-5-1 shape, and it was. Cavani was doing the chasing at the top, and you had Bruno kind of coming from midfield as a number 10 going forward and backwards, keeping the shape. And the shape is fine. However, I think you could see as well, McTominay, who's had an injury in that first 20 minutes, really struggled. And Neymar put him on toast. And I don't actually think that Neymar and Mbappe played that well last night. I thought they were okay, but they only really operated or did their best work when United allowed them to. And that first 20 minutes was a disaster when you actually look at the issues, and we'll unpack them here today. But overall, I think Ole and the players will go away from this match and they won't be saying, oh, well, we played well, so it is what it is and great. I think there will be regrets about some of the execution because the game plan was solid, but actually letting that game plan unfold and do what United did in Paris successfully, that's why they won the game in Paris. It was kind of night and day in terms of this performance.
Yeah, I totally agree on the planning. I thought when I looked at the starting lineup, 4-2-3-1, Fred and McTominay double pivot, exactly what I expected. I think it's exactly what everyone else expected. I thought it was a correct decision. A lot of fans complaining no Van der Beek. We've gone through this many, many times in this podcast, why Van der Beek didn't play. So we're not going to go through that again. But essentially, United only needed a draw. And people might say, oh, it's pragmatic, it's negative. It's not, though, because at the end of the day, if United had drawn 1-1 and kept it tight, we'd be through to the knockout phase of the competition. Sir Alex Ferguson didn't go out and play gung-ho football all the time when he needs to secure a result. And I think Ole set it up next, and the planning was correct. But you're right, the execution. I just want to talk about the statistics quickly, Rob, so we get a full picture of sort of the breakdown after the game. So United, in terms of expected goals, 1.27, PSG 2.89. I think total shots as well, 12 for United, 13 for PSG. So the idea that United dominated or should have won the game, I'm not necessarily agreeing to that view. We had 5 on target, PSG had 6. And in terms of possession, United 44% and PSG 56%. Our pass accuracy was 82%, PSG's was 88%. So looking at those statistics, what do you sort of deduce from that? Because I think there's a lot said about statistics. Oh, well, United had this amount and this amount. But actually, when you look at it, PSG probably deserved to win the game.
Yes, I think they did deserve to win the game at the end of it, because I think in the second half, Tuchel made a tactical change. He made his substitutions. He allowed Mbappe and Neymar just to go central and to go higher up the pitch. And, they didn't win the game because of that change. Their goal was very, very scrappy to make it 2-1. And I think you can forget the third because it's on the counter-attack and United are trying to pile forward. But at 1-1, Tuchel was the manager that made the change. And I really think that, we'll talk about Fred in a minute. I think Fred was a walking red card from the half-hour point, in the first half. And I feel that Ole should have anticipated that. And Ole should have made the changes. He had players on his bench. I think the temptation is that when the result is in your favour, and at 1-1 the result was in Manchester United's favour, of course a draw would have been perfect and they would have qualified with that. There's always that temptation to stick rather than twist. But I do believe that Ole and the bench should have had the foresight to see that it was only going to take one tackle that the referee didn't like to see Fred get a second yellow. You don't have to be a kind of wild challenge. I said I think Fred's tackle was legal. It wasn't a yellow card, the second one, and United fans feel it was unfair, but it's not unfair because in that situation, what you always tell players is to stay on their feet. Yeah, you got a yellow card. You're dancing the tightrope. Don't put your foot in. Don't slide in. Don't go to ground. And he did that, and he paid the price. But Manchester United paid the price because of that. And that little spell was when the goal came. And then really United needed to respond. And then obviously lost a man, went down to 10, and they're in trouble. And I think as soon as they went down to 10 men, that was game over. There was no way with an extra player and with the ball retention, like you just said there, 82% for the whole game. Not the worst statistic ever, but United didn't hold on to the ball for the first 20 minutes of the game and really didn't do much with it with the last 20 minutes because it was difficult firefighting when you're down to 10 men. People could say that's the reaction of the game, the way it unfolded. However, I think if Ole sees that and actually makes that change earlier in the second half, doesn't have to be on 45 minutes, but could have been after 55 or 60 minutes. Hindsight is a beautiful thing. He had players on the bench to be able to change it, to get Fred off there, to keep 11 men on the pitch. And if United had 11 men on the pitch going into the last 10 minutes, say, with, at 2-1, they could have made it 2-2. So I think that's on Ole, and I really do think that that's sending off. I say that the manager is responsible for that. I don't think Fred let anyone down because Fred was just playing the game that he always plays. Fred is combative now. Fred is that kind of midfielder. Fred is always going to be aggressive. Why? Because Man United have bred him for a year to become an aggressive, ball challenging midfielder. I think it's very, very difficult for him to not be like that when that's what Manchester United are telling him to be.
Yes, spot on. Let's talk about Fred now before we move on to a few other topics. I think we do also need to talk about the channel between Lindelof and Wan-Bissaka. I think that's definitely something which needs to be discussed. But let's talk about Fred. So a few things on Fred. I thought he was poor as a whole. And players have bad games, right? Fred's been pretty good this season. So it's not out of the realms of possibility that a player has a bad game. And I don't think we should be overreactionary to that. Because Rob, I saw on Twitter this whole week leading up to this game or after the Southampton game, how good Fred is. And there's always, as you always say, don't go too high, don't go too low. People were going too high on Fred. And I was seeing and I was thinking, Fred's a good player. As we always say, with 2 or 3 things he's very good at. But he's got major flaws to his game. As you said, he's a combative midfielder. He played the way he usually does. But I think, one, he was poor. Yes, it wasn't a foul for the one he got sent off on, but he should have already been off for a headbutt. He is a very lucky boy. And that was the warning sign for me, right? For me, when I looked at both Fred and McTominay in that first half, I thought they lost their heads. I think McTominay grew into the game and I think he was better. But you saw several times both Maguire and Bruno telling Fred to just calm down. A lot of football obviously is about tactics, but it's also about composure. In a big game like this, you need all your players to be right in there. It's not just about how they play tactically. The amount of times that Maguire had to come over, and I thought Maguire had a good game. I thought he also led the team well. But that's also a sign to Ole to be like, right, okay, maybe he's been mentally impacted here by the way that PSG like to wind up the players. Paredes was getting in his head. And that's where the manager's got to step in and be like, right, okay, look, we need 11 men on the pitch. And I think the whole point of playing them together, Fred and McTominay, is to have that discipline, have the compactness, the insurance, so that Bruno and the front three can go forward. But we weren't seeing that. So that's when, for me, Ole should have thought, right, we need to change something. Now, a few things about Fred. I think from the off, I thought he was a liability with his first touch. He held on to the ball too long. And that first 20 minutes, we were poor. And he was dispossessed by Verratti very early on, and that really set the tone. But this is a key statistic here. He finished with no successful tackles or interceptions. And that, for me, that's the mind-blowing statistic, because you bring him in there to be the combative one, to break the play up and then to feed it forward to Bruno. And that's, for me, the reason why it completely undermined Ole's argument for keeping him on. The risk that Ole took by keeping him on was completely unnecessary. When you looked at the bench, there was Matic there, Van der Beek, Pogba. United, it's not all Ole's fault, obviously. The blame is not on Ole, because I think the setup was correct. But decisions like this are the difference between you qualifying or you going into Europa League, which United could do next week, Rob. They could lose to Leipzig and they could be back in the Europa League. And it's these small margins and these decisions that you need to be judged on. And I think Ole got it wrong. And I think Fred let United down yesterday as well.
Yeah, I wouldn't go as far. Like, my opinion is, I wouldn't say that Fred let United down. What I would say is that in that situation, it's up to the manager to take control of what's happening. So if you've trained Fred week after week after week to play a certain way, and he's playing that way, and that he might make a mistimed tackle or something like that, then that happens in football. I think at the point where Fred puts his head in, and let's be honest, the PSG player is goading him to do that, and Fred is silly for doing that. And in the Premier League, there is no doubt you get a red card, and it's gone, and it's done early. That player is sent off. It is violent conduct. And yeah, it's not the most violent act ever. And I actually do think when you look at the replay, Fred doesn't make any real contact with him. But as soon as you kind of make that movement there like that towards a player's head, it's an automatic red card. The referee got that wrong and United dodged a bullet. But when you dodge that bullet, you got to make sure you dodge all the future bullets as well off the back of that one. And Ole didn't do that. And I think in that situation, there will be a reliance to keep Fred on the pitch, because maybe he's defensively better than Pogba, maybe he's defensively better than Van der Beek. You might look at Matic and feel that he's not mobile enough to deal with Mbappe and with Neymar. But you have to change it. That is your job. Yeah, you can't just stick and hope for the best. And I think that, I often say to football fans, that managers and players do know more than all of us, more than the fans, more than football journalists, because they live it and they breathe it. And, it's their necks on the line at the end of the day. But I think with Fred, you could see really early on that he was only going to have to make one mistimed tackle and he was gone. And when he made that tackle, I actually thought he was gone before that, when he went into a 50-50 and it was actually the PSG player that got booked. And then when you see the replay, Fred actually stands on his foot.
Yeah.
That's a yellow card. So he didn't get that yellow card. That got given to the PSG player and he got away with that one. And I think at that point, as the manager, you've got to go, right, I've got to change this now. Yeah. So you say to Fred, you communicate to him and you say, stop, don't make any more tackles, stay on your feet, just stay in the position and wait because you're coming off. And then you make the change. And Ole didn't do that. What Ole did was he waited until PSG made their changes. And those changes from Tuchel won the game. Yeah, because Tuchel managed to get the game onto the front foot for PSG, pushed Manchester United's block further back, allowed Neymar to play with a little bit more space, to be able to come in and out a little bit more and go a little bit wider. And PSG won the match. And that's what it's about. It's about winning games. Yeah. When we talk about this and we do the podcast, we're talking about how we impact these things. So the Fred issue was a mistake, both from the player, but I think mainly from the manager. And another thing that I want to talk about is the left channel, because I think when you look at the channel for Manchester United, the channel between Wan-Bissaka and Lindelof, from minute one, PSG set their stall out to exploit that channel, because that's where Neymar likes to play. That's where Mbappe likes to play. And they almost kind of showed their hand with the team selection by not playing Di Maria, who plays on the right side. They kind of told United, we're coming through your left channel, and that is it. And you could see as well that Scott McTominay last night was not fit. He's been fighting for fitness now for weeks. And, I'd like to speak about that as well. And obviously, Marcus Rashford, because I do believe that he should not be starting games with his shoulder injury. But that channel between Wan-Bissaka and Lindelof was a problem, because on the deck, Lindelof was getting beaten in that channel, and Wan-Bissaka wasn't helping him. Wan-Bissaka was pushing wider, getting sucked to the side of the wing. Of course, that's part of his job to cover there. But then they were coming inside with two passes and going through that channel. And in the first 20 minutes, United were 1-0 down, and PSG didn't do a really good job of exploiting that after that moment. But the opportunities were there, and United clogged that channel a little bit better with McTominay. He followed Neymar into that space, and that did help. But it was a tactical problem that United didn't respond quick enough to, and ultimately it was part of why United lost the game.
Yeah, let's delve into that channel as well, because I think what United did well in the first game, and again, remember, we played three at the back, and that was the reason why. We had Tuanzebe, who was pretty much mopping up any of the runs that Mbappe made from behind, and McTominay did a fantastic job of slotting into that right-hand channel and basically man-marking Neymar, which is what he did. But we went to a back four, and a lot of fans are asking this, and I think it's pretty obvious why we didn't go with a back three, because we didn't have the personnel to play that. And I don't think Oli was going to go and throw someone like Bailly in there, because, that would have been a massive risk to take. So I think in that respect, the 4-2-3-1 was correct. But Rob, this is not a problem. That right-hand channel between Lindelof and Wan-Bissaka is not something that, is something that we've been seeing time and time again. It's not just in this game we've seen issues. And for me, it stems not really, I don't think it's a Lindelof problem. It stems from Wan-Bissaka. He's very comfortable on the outside, making those slide tackles or using the touchline. Anything behind him, anything on, so inside positionally, it's an area which he's extremely weak. He doesn't have the awareness. Now, a lot of people call for Wan-Bissaka to play in the back three as one of the centre backs. That would be the biggest disaster possible. He has no positional awareness. I like to also touch back to the game against Brighton, where the amount of time Solly March had space on the back post. I know it's a different sort of thing, but it's still about the positional awareness of Wan-Bissaka. Now, I like Wan-Bissaka. I think he's a fantastic 1v1 defender, but you've got to offer more. We've spoken about that right back position time and time again. He's fantastic in the tackle, but actually he's now, even the positional side of his game is now lacking, or it's either it's regressing or he's not developing the way he should. United got a serious problem there, Rob. And that was, like you said, it wasn't exploited as well by PSG, but it was a problem that occurred throughout the game for me. And what do United now do then with that position? Because if you're going to have to play two defensive midfielders like we did last night for most games to cover up for Wan-Bissaka in that channel, then United are going to suffer going forward.
Yeah, I think right back for Manchester United for a little while has been a kind of itch that they can't scratch for some reason. So the way I look at it is like this: is last season I spoke a lot about Lindelof's positioning and his covering, and one of the things that I actually said at that point was that it must be really difficult for Wan-Bissaka to know what's going on inside him because Lindelof wasn't really doing the job, with the ball on the deck or with covering. And every time that someone got through that channel, Lindelof was exposed. And United conceded so many goals last year from that issue from Lindelof not being able to defend either one-on-one or allowing his man to come inside or to kind of exploit the channels. This year, it's a little bit different. I think Lindelof's performances have been fine. I think, especially in recent weeks, I think Lindelof and Maguire have stepped up to the plate and have played quite well. I don't think they deserve any criticism. But I do think now the issue is that chemistry between Lindelof on the right-hand side at centre-back and his right-back. And he has to have faith in what Wan-Bissaka does, and Wan-Bissaka has to have faith in what he does. Vice versa. It's a team game. What we're seeing with Wan-Bissaka is that he has become more conservative since the day he arrived at Manchester United, and he makes repetitive issues both defensively and offensively. How do you solve this? Well, first of all, you've just got to get better. That's one side of it. And if you don't get better, you have to try something different. That's what a manager has to do. When you look at it last night, I totally agree with what you said there. Wan-Bissaka wants to be combative, one-on-one in the challenge, and he feels comfortable with that. You can see that he positively beams when he's one-on-one with anyone, because he knows, that's why his nickname's Spider. He's got like 8 legs. He can tackle you, he can do all of those things. He likes that side of the game. But you need to be more. You have to be more. So I've also talked about my worries about Tellers defensively, on the left-hand side. And I think in the 4 last night, Tellers did okay. The issues from the previous game where maybe Tellers reneged too much space on the inside and exposed the gaps between him and the centre-back. That wasn't present last night. I thought Tellers was really disciplined. But of course, that takes something away from Tellers' forward game. And in that formation, which is kind of like a 4-5-1 shape, even though it is 4-2-3-1, you're kind of saying to your fullbacks to sit and do the job and do all the dirty work. Wan-Bissaka can sit. I'm not really that interested in his forward work yesterday. But it was a big problem that first 20 minutes that he was being really, really sucked towards the byline and allowing that space inside. And if I'm Neymar, I'm just rubbing my hands in glee going, all right, fullback, keep going wide, because when that ball comes into me, I've now got 20 yards to run in behind you. And that was a problem. And as I said a minute ago, I don't think PSG exploited that well enough. But the fact that Manchester United gave it away, for me, is a tactical problem. That is a problem with execution. And it was hard for Lindelof then, because Lindelof was getting one-on-one with Neymar, Mbappe, whoever was running that channel at that moment. And I was just thinking, he's going to get done here. And he was getting done on the deck. He's not the quickest. If you get him behind him, he doesn't really cover very well. He didn't have a bad game overall in the 90 minutes. I don't think the centre-backs did. They did okay. But the fact that United lost...
He got an assist, Rob, to be fair. He got the assist for the goal.
Wan-Bissaka? He got the assist for the goal, and I kind of tweeted at that point, it must be Christmas if Wan-Bissaka's getting an assist, and it's kind of a little joke. And that's good that he was in that position to get the ball to Rashford's feet. But overall, it's the other things. It's all about balance, isn't it? When we talk about tactics and performance and execution. And his execution on the night wasn't great. It is a repetitive issue. And some will say he's damned if he doesn't, damned if he doesn't. Do we want him to be a progressive going forward and bombing forward and getting 15 assists a season? And we want him to be more Trent than Aaron? And, how do you want him to be? Well, I'm sorry, you've got to incrementally improve all your parts of your game. You can't just give it up and say, well, now I'm better on the front foot, I can be not as good on the back. The problem with Wan-Bissaka is that, as you said there, he is kind of regressing in certain parts. I think his confidence, he's young. And if you don't have the experience to kind of just take a deep breath sometimes, it's very, very easy to make mistakes. And I think that's what we see with Wan-Bissaka. He's very, very keen to get into the challenge, to get into the physical battle. He's not quite the chess master. He has to play right back a little bit more up here rather than just in here. Ideally, you get both. But this generally loses your games when you make that mistake about just going in to be tight to man mark. You don't really want your fullback to man mark. You don't want him to get too close. You want your fullback to look after the territory, and that would really, really then help Lindelof a lot in terms of being inside and blocking that channel.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think as this season has gone on, we've spoken about Wan-Bissaka pretty much every episode, Rob, so far, especially in the last 4 or 5. It's a problem for Man United.
It's repetitive, isn't it? And that's
yeah.
and quite often week to week to week to week is a different issue. So that's my problem, is that one week we're talking about him not getting forward, other weeks we're talking about him not looking after the defensive work. Then we're looking at talking about him centrally when he comes across to cover. I think he was partially to blame for the second PSG goal, where really he's dropping at a time when United should be pushing out from the corner. You know, these are little tactical things that you try to teach players, but they can only do it right or do it wrong. And in that moment, obviously, he does that moment wrong and he's in trouble. And Manchester United conceded a goal because they're playing people on side. Both him and Cavani did. But I always look to the defender in that situation, because it's the defender who's got to push out and pull out. If an attacker gets caught on the back foot, it happens. But I don't really want to see any of my defenders doing that.
Yeah, exactly. And for me, I think it's, look, he's young. He can still get better. He can still develop. But confidence is a massive thing. And while we're talking about confidence, Rob, we might as well go on to Anthony Martial, who for me, his confidence is absolutely shot. Now, a lot of fans want to see him on the left. I wanted to see him on the left. But you're of the view that he's better centrally. And I think there are a lot of fans that agree with that. But it's very binary, isn't it, to say that if he'd scored that chance, then United would have won? Because I think a lot of fans are now blaming the defeat on Martial's lack of finishing. I mean, he had 3 shots. He got 1 on target. That was a really, really bad miss. And nobody's missed more big chances in the Champions League than Martial this season for Man United. That's 4 big chances, which is strange, because he is someone that I do associate with being a clinical finisher. Something's off there with him. I think it's confidence. I don't think he's suddenly become a bad player overnight. Obviously, the reactionary nature of fans say Martial's now a poor player, he's not good enough, needs to be dropped. I'm not sure what the solution. Well, my solution is this, actually, Rob. This is my solution. Carry on playing him on that left-hand side, because I think he needs to play himself into form. United also don't have the depth in the wide areas to play someone instead of Martial. Now, I thought for me last night, my biggest problem with him, and it has been both actually with him and Rashford, they don't do the defensive work well enough, in my opinion. Now, I'm not sure if you agree with that, but for me, they don't track back enough. And also the press, we don't press as a team. And it makes it very easy for the opposition to pass through the first line of our press. And that for me is a coaching thing. It is a tactical thing, but also the players have to take some responsibility. They need to use their heads as well. They need to absorb the tactics. They need to be able to implement them on the pitch. And I'm just finding at the moment that our wide players aren't doing that. Martial for me is not a number 9. We've said this before, and I know we disagree on that, but he's not a number 9. But also in the position where I thought he'd be more comfortable, I actually think he's playing worse on the left. So what's your view on Martial, and what does Oli do with him? Because we've got a serious problem in that front line at the moment.
The first question to answer there is something that you highlighted about your preference for him to play on the left. And then you immediately said that he doesn't do the defensive work of that position. So why do you want him to play on the left? So this is the way I look at it. And this is kind of what I said in the last podcast about Anthony Martial. And this is the issue, is that if United played 4-3-3 with 3 high players up the pitch, like say Liverpool do in their pomp, Salah, Firmino and Mane, then great. You can play him in a 4-3-3. He hasn't got to do a lot of work coming back. He's got 3 midfielders behind him, joining up the dots, doing the work. Happy days, you can go and be a forward. In Manchester United's 4-2-3-1, it's a transitional formation, which means that the wide players in the 3 behind the striker have to come back and help the fullbacks. Martial doesn't do that great. And I actually think that in the second half, he did it much better before he was actually pulled in the game. I think he got better at it because you're probably told to get better at it and to get on with it. But like you're saying there, you have a preference for him to play on the left. I don't want him to play on the left for the exact reason that you gave immediately after saying what was wrong. And that is he does not do that work. If you play someone in that position, They have to do the defensive work, and then they also have to press. Now, I'm not at all saying for 1 second that I think Martial is lazy. I just think his natural game is to not do those things, because he wants to get the ball at feet, so he comes a little bit deeper. He wants to turn, he wants to space, and he wants to run. But if you're running from the halfway line with the ball at your feet on the left-hand side, it's pretty easy to defend against. Defenses will take that every day of the week. Where I want Martial to get the ball is on the edge of the box. And in a 4-2-3-1, you generally don't get the ball there because you're too close to the defense. You have to come a bit deeper. So I think that Anthony Martial is ineffectual as a left-sided forward in a 4-2-3-1. This is a tactical decision. It's not about the player. It's not really about kind of his skill set. It's about what can he give to that formation at that moment of time. And I think what we saw yesterday, especially early on in the game, and you're right to highlight the press, and it was an issue on both sides, yeah? And I think when you look at Martial, when you look at Rashford, you know, they were always a heartbeat off where they should be with the press. So they were pressing, but you've got to sprint. You've got to do what Bruno does. You've got to go and engage. Yeah, you've got to go, right, I'm getting there by hook or by crook. Now, that does hurt your long-term stamina in the match. And I think players do think about this. You know, they're thinking, hang on, in the second half, I need some legs. I need to be able to keep running. But you've also got to do the work. And if you can't do the work, don't play there. So that's the way I look at it. If Anthony Martial misses those chances yesterday as a number 9, I'm all right with it because he's doing his job of being in the box, getting chances. But I'm less all right with it when you're coming from the left-hand side where you've got more space to exploit. So I think when you look at it in slow-mo, when that ball comes across from Rashford, and we all know the chance we're talking about where he skies it, the ball does bobble just before, but if he passes that ball into the back of the net, he scores. It doesn't matter if it bobbles. And what did he try and do? He tried to smash it like he always tries to do, puts his foot through it, leathers it, trying to emphatically score the goal. The whole point is in that position, you've got to just score. It doesn't matter what it looks like.
Is that a confidence thing, Rob?
No, it's decision making.
Technique.
No, it's not confidence. I don't think he goes into the game thinking I'm not confident. But what I will say is this, and I think we should join the dots because psychologically, these things do matter. If you tell Anthony Martial for a year that he's your number 9, and then you tell him you're playing on the left, what does that do to him psychologically? Now, I'm sure he's willing to do it, and all footballers always say, I'm willing to do whatever the manager says, I'm willing to do whatever it is to win, to make the team better and all of this. But do we think Anthony Martial is happy about losing his number 9 berth to Cavani? And let's be honest, it's a fair decision because Cavani scores 2 goals the week before, does well, comes off the bench, deserved to start the game. That's not the criticism. The issue is, if you're Martial, do you feel at your optimum playing in a position that you've left behind you? Yeah, he said, I want to be a number 9. This is what he said. And people at the football club have said, you know what? He is a number 9. He's not a left-sided forward. And then we go to one of the biggest games of the season against PSG, and we're playing him on the left again. You see, Haider, this is my issue with it because all of these things, it's my favorite word, holistic challenges and all of this. Unless you have a holistic outlook on these things with positions and what players can do, you will lose games. You will. And last night, that was a problem. And I think Anthony Martial coming across from the left-hand side, he's actually out of position from what his brain is training himself to do. He's getting used to being a number 9 and playing in that corridor where the penalty spot is. Yeah, that corridor all the way from where the goalkeeper stands through the penalty spot to the edge of the area. And you teach number 9s to play in that corridor. Sergio Aguero is the best in the world at it. Yeah, fantastic. Just playing the corridor. Now he's not playing the corridor. He's playing the channel again. That's difficult. You can't just switch, even if it's something that you know you've done before. It's going to hurt your overall game. It hurts your balance. You come into the box at a different angle. The things that you've practiced for months and months and months and months suddenly become null and void. Now, fans don't latch onto that because they think it's just as simple as putting the ball in the net. And ultimately, yes, it is. That's what it is. But when you're a player and in that split second, you can panic. You can do something wrong because you're not akin. The chess match that I always talk about, you're out of the game. Yeah, you're just participating, but you're not really there. And I think coming from that side onto his right foot is something that he's not really done all season, and maybe even go back into last year. He should be used to it. And people can say, yeah, his fault. It is his fault. And if he misses that chance and skies it, he's got to take responsibility. But there are reasons tactically and emotionally. Those things do matter in the moment. And I do think for him there, do I have any sympathy for him? Not really, because ultimately he's got to score that goal. He's got to put it away. But he wasn't the only one that did that on the night. Again, there were chances. Other players had chances. I thought Bruno had a little bit of a stinker for me. He just didn't join the darts. He didn't really kind of, he worked hard. He always worked hard. But I thought his kind of end product was lacking. I think Rashford, I have a massive problem now with him starting games when he's injured. We did it last season to the point where he broke his back and then he was out for months. And then he came back and he still wasn't fit. And Ole kept playing him. And I know there's a temptation to play Rashford because he's become the heartbeat of the football club. Again, both emotionally and kind of outward looking to the world. Marcus Rashford is Manchester United at the moment. But I think in that situation, if your player's injured, you've got other players to go and do the job. Bring Rashford off the bench. And we saw how good Rashford can be when he comes on as a cameo for 20 or 30 minutes. We saw that hat-trick he scored earlier on in the season from the bench. I think that would have been smarter. And I don't want to see Martial play on the left. Like you've said that you want to see him play on the left. I'll be honest, I don't want to see him play on the left. He doesn't do the defensive work. He's not aware of what's behind him. He comes too deep. He doesn't let the fullback overlap. He doesn't come inside enough when he gets the ball. He's always looking to play the one-trick pony on the edge of the box. 1, 2, 3 touches. I'm on my right, put it in the top corner. You can't play like that. That's not how we want that position to be played. I think Rashford is better on the left, because Rashford just gives you a little bit more flexibility.
Would Rashford have finished off that chance, Rob? That's the question.
But that kind of hypothetical is kind of, no offense, it's nonsensical because we don't, any other player, if the ball bobbles, then all of us might sky it. Yeah. And
let's go back to, you're talking about the technique, because I do actually agree. You brought up some fantastic points. Rashford's comfortable coming off the left, opening up his body. So if we're talking technique, so he would have, technique-wise, he would have been more comfortable and he would have been more instinctive.
I think he passes it into the net.
That was my point.
Yeah. I think he passes it, and I think, I think Cavani might have passed it in the net. I think Bruno might have passed it in the net. Again, in that moment, you can't really tell what a player is going to do. You might be able to lean one way or the other, but I think that the issue for Martial is that he's coming from a starting position to an end position that's slightly different to what he's probably practicing in training. He's been practicing as number 9 probably for 2 years now. And now we're telling him, go back and be a left-sided player. So you scored 23 goals as a centre-forward, Martial. Yeah, thank you very much. Now go and play on the left again. That's a problem psychologically for footballers. And players do have this issue when their positions are slightly altered, because it doesn't look like much to the football fan, to the common fan when they're looking at it as a layman. But to a footballer, it's everything, because it's all up here where you play the game and you start making maybe bad choices. And I think he had 2 chances yesterday, and you saw what he tried to do. The first time he skies it, and then with his second opportunity, which again, I think Bruno just has to shoot. Bruno, like everyone, I think Robbie Savage said, oh, what a great layoff. There's no layoff. There's no goalkeeper there. Shoot. Put it in the bottom corner. The goalkeeper is stranded. Put it away. Don't put it inside to Martial, because then Martial has to kind of think, right, what am I doing? I've got a second here to think. I'm going to leather this. I'm going to just put my foot through it. I just want contact. Whereas again, he might have slotted that another time. If he's calmer and in the moment and living in the moment, which is what footballers should be, then you just take the stress out of the situation, and all you think about is just putting it in the bottom corner. Yeah. And he didn't do that. So both times I felt he was affected by circumstance, and that's not an excuse. Other football fans will say it might be an excuse, but for me, those things do matter.
You bring up some fantastic points about the mentality. This is a concern then for Ollie, Rob. This is a decision. These are big decisions he has to make then, because if we know when Martial got his shirt taken off him, the number 9, that obviously was something which, I'm going to say it, he sulked about.
It's painful.
And it's something that which obviously affected his confidence. And then when he was playing well under Jose Mourinho, him and Rashford were battling for that left wing spot, and they were both pushing each other. They're both in fantastic form. You bring in Alexis Sanchez. Again, both players drop form, poor decision. So now it's another bit of a watershed moment, isn't it, for Martial and for Ollie? What's he going to do? Because you're right. I think going forward, I quite like Martial on the left wing personally. I think he does run the channel better than Rashford does. But yeah, I've got issues with him defensively. And if you're playing Telles at left back, who isn't the best defensively, let's put it that way. He hasn't shown many problems for me so far, but it's a small sample size. But then what does Ollie do with this situation? Because it seems to me right now, Cavani's not going to play every game. He's 33 years old. Obviously, he's not the youngest. But what does Ollie do then with the left channel, because we might as well push into Rashford now as well. Injured, clearly yesterday. He was holding his back as well. He's always, for me, been someone that works hard, and I will never ever fault him for that. But when he's injured or when he's playing with a knock, he's really off his game. Now, Ollie always plays him again and again when he's injured. He broke his back last year. These are decisions that we need to make. Ollie needs to make these decisions. And we talk about Ollie's choices, right? So with Fred, keeping him on, that's an Ollie decision. Playing Rashford when he's injured, I know it's a big game, but again, an Ollie decision. Shifting Martial out to the left and possibly affecting his mentality. A lot of fans will be like, oh, well, he get on with it. You know, man up is the sort of thing. But you know how it is. But again, an Ollie decision. All these small decisions, you know, they all become a big problem then, don't they? Because if Rashford gets out injured for a season again, if Martial's confidence goes and he wants to leave, if we've lost Fred now, haven't we, for a certain amount of games in the Champions League. So all these things together, it becomes a problem. So these are decisions that you get judged on, and ultimately, I'm not going to say Ollie's losing his job. I'm not saying that, but they pile up. We could have a serious problem. So yeah, for Rashford, my biggest problem with him the last 3 weeks has been he doesn't look right because he's injured. We know that with his shoulder. Also, his decision-making has been a little bit off, and I think it's a little bit of a concern.
It is a concern. I always say the small details win and lose you matches. Yeah, so you're right to highlight those things. However, if Man United win last night, it's a kind of different kettle of fish, isn't it? You know, we're looking at it with different eyes. But we have to be honest. We have to be straight about what we're seeing. I think when we look at Marcus Rashford, I agree with you. I think week after week after week, we've seen a decline in his kind of overall performances because of this shoulder injury that he's had. It kept him out of the England squad. It was a problem for him. You know, they tried to rest it for a week or two. Then he kind of plays, you know, reduced minutes. Then United are trying to manage him, and he's playing different positions, playing on the left, playing on the right, playing through the centre at times in a two. So he's doing lots of different things, and there's obviously this reliance on Marcus Rashford to be a big part of the team. There's no problem with that when he's fit, but it's exactly the same issue that we've had with Pogba. Yeah, we've tried to rush Pogba back last season. He got injured again, and he's out. So people blame Pogba for that, and it's not really his fault. That's a choice from the manager. And then this season, again, we see a kind of rushing back of Pogba. They slow it down again because they realise he's not ready. And United now have got a squad that I think should be able to handle injuries a little bit more. Now, when you have lots of injuries, then you're in trouble. But when it's just one or two or three players, you have to be able to be brave enough to make those choices. So last night, playing Rashford is a kind of 50-50 choice. Yeah, you have to assess that in training. And I'm absolutely sure that Marcus Rashford is telling Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, I want to play. 100%. The player saying, I'm fit, I'm ready to go. Give me a few painkillers. I'm on it. Let's try it. I want to be a part of this game. You know, Marcus Rashford bleeds Manchester United, as does the manager. But ultimately, I look at it like this. I would have probably, and I want to see United do this more in weeks ahead, I don't think Cavani should be the starter. Cavani should be your weapon from the bench. Cavani should be the super sub. Every club needs quality from the bench. When you looked at the setup last night, United had less quality on the bench. But if you'd started with a different formation in terms of who plays where, and say play Martial through the middle, play Rashford on the left, and say play Greenwood on the right, that would have been the choice. Or you might have even played Dan James there. I know people don't want to see him play, but I'm talking about balance here, and I'm talking about endeavour and the game plan. Then I think United would have been in a better position in the last 30 minutes to change it to go and win a game. If you bring Cavani on for 30 minutes in that match last night, he scores. I think so. You know, I think he comes on and makes a difference. Whereas last night,
I think Cavani play? Did he play? Was it an emotional decision as well? Because obviously he's playing PSG.
No, I think also there is this thinking that because he scored 2 goals that you start. Yeah, you scored 2 goals, you got to play him. So that's what I remember you saying that, and that's what other fans have said. You know, he should be the starting number 9, and I look at that and I think that makes sense. But you have to sometimes look at the bigger picture of the whole 90 minutes. You have to win when the final whistle blows, not in the 30th minute, not in the 60th minute, on 90. Yeah, that's what matters. And that includes your bench. Your bench is a huge part of that. And I thought last night, you know, pulling Martial and Cavani at the same time and bringing on Rashford and Van der Beek was a poor decision. Why? Because those 2 younger players had to come in and make a dramatic impact in a game where United weren't retaining the ball with any conviction. So what are you going to do? You know, that doesn't. I said at half time that it was a game made for Mason Greenwood. And that's what I would have probably done. I'd have probably taken Martial off early, pushed Rashford to the left if he was still fit enough, and played Greenwood from the right, because there was space in that channel for Greenwood to bring it in his left and to get a shot off. And we know Mason has got that God-given ability on his left foot, like Robin van Persie, to hit the target, and you make it a more dangerous kind of scenario for PSG. And let's be honest, Greenwood has played that right-sided role in a 4-2-3-1 more than any Manchester United player in the last 12 months. So he knows it better than anyone.
And he's played it the best, Rob.
And he's played it the best. He scored 20 goals last year. So there is a trust there. Now, I understand that Mason has gone through this period of grief, as we talked about in the last podcast, and it's been a really tough time for him. And United must manage his mental health and everything that goes with it. And that's the right thing to do from Ole. But these things are fine margins. We will talk about them. I look at Rashford. I don't want Rashford to start games when he's injured. Yeah, I understand him being on the bench and then maybe giving you 20 minutes of, full throttle Marcus Rashford. But for me, I saw it in about, was it the 6th minute, where he got the ball and United it was the first time United got on the front foot, and he had the fullback push up against him and there was acres of space behind him, and Rashford couldn't turn on the afterburners. He kind of dribbled a little bit and did a kind of like tiki-taka forward for 5 or 6 yards. And I was just thinking, knock it, man. Go Rashford. Because that's what you want. That's what he's good at. And the reason is this. The body part of your body that you sprint with is your shoulders and your arms. You do this, right? It's the first thing you do. And if you've got a shoulder injury, you can't do that, which means you can't sprint. And that's what happened there. And I saw that in the 6th minute. And I thought, that's a problem, because it means he's not going to be able to run in behind. It means he's not going to exploit that channel on the right. Now, he didn't play badly in the game. He scored a goal. But that is an issue. And if you're PSG, you notice that, these tiny little nuances of the game. You go, Rashford can't run because he's got a shoulder injury. Good. Let's just stand off him, because he's not going to be able to run in behind. We can deal with that. And of course, he can't press. Why? Because you've got to sprint. You've got to sprint in the press, and he can't do that because he's injured. All of these things matter. I know they don't get noticed by fans, but they do matter in the whole context of 90 minutes.
Yeah, fantastic points. And also to add, when Ole did make the changes, obviously Greenwood and Van de Beek came on. Well, we were down to 10 men as well, Rob. So what hope did they really have? I thought actually when we went down to 10 men, we actually played well. We didn't capitulate. We could easily capitulate like we did against Spurs. So in that respect, I think the mentality was good. But I agree with you on Rashford. I've said for a while, I mean, he seems to be the one player that Ole will play no matter what, whether he's injured, whether he's not. Now, as you say, Marcus probably wants to play, but this is a decision that Ole needs to make, to say, look, I don't think Dan James would have been any different last night, because I think what United needed was they needed to work hard off the ball. They needed to press as a unit, and they didn't. And I think everyone goes in on Dan James, that we know his quality on the ball, but United weren't doing the work off the ball properly. They weren't pressing consistently. They were disjointed. And I think Dan James probably could have been someone who would have done that off the ball stuff better. As you said, Rashford couldn't run, so Dan James will run all day for you if you ask him to. So these sort of things, people forget. They always think about on the ball, but off the ball is just as important. And PSG aside, packed with quality, Rob. People forget this. And this is another thing that I want to say before we move on to Bruno as a final piece. But what I do want to say is that United fans went in with an air of, I think, to an extent, arrogance, and they underestimated PSG. This is a team that, yes, okay, there's a lot of, they're probably at their lowest ebb, I think, in a long time, but they've still got a very good manager. Tuchel is no slouch. They've still got world-class players in their squad, Neymar and Mbappe. Fans are saying, we're going to go and win 3-1. And this is the problem. So when United don't win or they don't perform, then there's the hysteria. Oh, this is awful. United are this, Ole that. And it's, Martial's this, Rashford's this. It's always in the middle, isn't it, really? It's not as bad as it is, and it's also not as good as it is.
Yeah, I think, look, if you look after Neymar and Mbappe, I think you can go and win a game against PSG. I don't think they're that great. Yeah, like we're talking about them being a good side. And I don't think it's arrogance to look at their recent record and really their performances since getting to the Champions League final at the end of last season, that they've been poor. And that Thomas Tuchel's contract runs out at the end of the season is not going to be the manager after that moment when his contract expires. That tells you a lot. That's where PSG are at the moment. There was a chance for Manchester United last night to get the result they wanted. When I say result, they didn't need to win. They just needed to draw. 0-0 would have been fine. I'd have been happier with a really boring 0-0 draw last night, because it means that Manchester United are in the next round of the Champions League. And as it stands now, I'm not confident. I think going to Leipzig and having to, to get a result at Leipzig against a team that can turn it on with the afterburners, they're a bit hit or miss, but they'll be desperate to overturn what happened at Old Trafford. They'll want to show that they're a better team than that, and they are a better team than that. And Nagelsmann's a better manager than that. Then I think United are in trouble now, and it's an issue that they've formulated themselves here by how they played the game last night overall. But PSG for me, when you remove Neymar and you remove Mbappe, how many world-class players have they really got? Well, one of them was on the bench in Di Maria, and I think Marquinhos at his best is world-class. Whether he plays at centre-back or as defensive midfielder, he can be a world-class entity. Looking at the rest of that team, most of them were playing out of position last night. Vast majority of them. It's quite interesting. The Ander Herrera question, I always talk about this when we talk about Fred as well, is that people obviously laud Fred and his performances have been good recently. But it's the same thing with Ander Herrera. Ander Herrera didn't start last night. And for me, Ander Herrera is a lot of smoke.
Player. He's a better player than Fred. For me, he's a better player. He's better on the ball. He's a cleverer player than Fred.
He's better on the ball, but I think that when you talk about Ander Herrera, you're kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul. And what I mean by that is that, he can run around, he can show heart, he can show desire. I think when we saw him in a Manchester United shirt playing a defensive role, his neatness and tidiness from back to front wasn't there. It was one of the issues why Ander Herrera wasn't included in lots of Mourinho's later squads. And it was also why, when you get to the crux, when you look at him and say, is this the player that takes my midfield forward? The real answer to that was no. So he goes to PSG and he's not even starting last night. He came on the last 50 minutes. And now I think that's his role. I think Ander Herrera is a really good player to bring off from the bench. I would not consider him anything better than that. That's the way I look at it. Lots of United fans are in love with him and still love him to this day. And that's because he talks a good game. He really does. He always talks about how much he loves United, and that's great. And we like players that love our football club, etc., etc., etc. But to me, it's all a little bit dull and boring. It's about form and function. But I think when you look at kind of the whole thing with PSG, is that they're not in a great moment. Manchester United should have exploited that. Manchester United could have won the game, but they could have very, very much got the draw, and that's all we needed. And that's how United should have managed it. That's why you take Fred off early and you manage it. You keep the ball better than we did, and you drain it. You drain that game. That's how you play these matches in Europe. You keep possession, you slow it down at times, you get 10 minutes of nothingness, just passing it sideways, making Neymar work for it, making Mbappe work for it. United didn't do any of that. It was all just blood and thunder. And blood and thunder can win you games. But in a game like that, I talk about the chess match all the time. You've got to be a little bit more thoughtful. You've got to be a little bit more deliberate. United weren't. They lost the game 3-1, and they probably deserved to lose the game at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think so. Rob, let's move on to the final point, and then we'll do two questions from the listeners, because we've covered a lot of the questions already, and some of them are not really relevant. So Bruno's performance yesterday, there's one moment. Do you remember in the first half where he had the ball and he got it, and I was like, hit it, and he tried to pass it across to Cavani, and I'm thinking, you're in such good goal scoring form. I wouldn't say his performances have been necessarily out of this world, but he just wasn't quite at the races yesterday. As you said, always works hard. And again, the layoff, he probably should have hit it as well. He had a header as well, which could have got in. So he's always affecting the game. I believe he had 2 shots, 1 on target. But United need more, don't they, from that position in that game? And it's not always on him, but it seems like a lot of the time, if he doesn't really perform or doesn't have a good game, United don't look as attacking going forward. And United need more from everyone. The collective needs to be creating more. And it's a concern for me. I think this is something that I do see a lot then when Bruno perhaps doesn't play badly. And he didn't play badly yesterday. I don't think many players played badly. I think Fred was bad. I don't think Martial was bad. I think he missed a bad chance. But with Bruno, if he doesn't play well, United don't necessarily play well. And this needs to change. It feels like we're over-reliant sometimes on Bruno to come up with the goods.
Yeah, I don't think anyone was bad in the Man United team. When we talk about these things, it is really fine lines between good and bad. So I don't like to lean on what's good and what's bad. I like to kind of just look at facts if you can. You can boil it down to facts. I look at it like this. When you play a kind of 4-2-3-1, you are expecting Bruno Fernandes to go and do a lot of the dog's work, as I call it. Yeah, you've got to go and close down. You've got to go and support Cavani. You've got to be a number 10. You've got to be a 9.5. You've got to be a number 8. You've got to do all of these things, and you've got to do them well. So that is hard. It's a hard job to do. When United play the diamond, it allows Bruno to be a little bit more flexible. So Bruno doesn't really have to go wider. It doesn't have to kind of guard channels. He doesn't have to look after areas. He can just kind of be the trequarista, the player that can operate in space between the centre forward and the midfield. And it's a much more controlled, nicer, creative role to play. But when you play 4-2-3-1, it's much more difficult. So that's the first point. What I will say is that when you look at the decisions last night, so, the decisions play that ball inside to Martial when the goal is there to kind of go after. That's up to the player in that moment to have the confidence to do the job. So only he can decide why he made that choice. And I'm sure it's an honest decision. Like, he's thinking, if I play it inside, it's an easier opportunity. And it's, again, I use basketball analogies for this. It's about percentage shots. So in basketball, you try and opt for whatever the shot has the lowest percentage of failure. Yeah. And in that situation, Bruno might be just thinking, if I swing my left boot at it, if I just play it inside to Martial, there's a less chance of him missing it than there is me. So I'm going to do that. And he's trying to do it for the team. So I think sometimes Bruno is a bit greedy. So I've got no problem with him trying to bring other players into the game. However, at that point, I just want to see him hit the target. Hit the target. It's a good chance. It's there for you. Go and win United what they need. Go and get United the result. So I think it's difficult for Bruno. And I think you saw last night, again, he looks quite frustrated in these moments when United are kind of firing and misfiring. And I think he always looks the most pained because he's telling people what to do and he's the heart and soul. And I think it was difficult for him. And that kind of game unfolded as a difficult scenario for United because they lost someone in the middle of the park. I don't think Fred played badly. He just made a couple of bad choices and the manager should have pulled him early. Get him out of there, get someone else in there. You got 11 men, you can go and get the result. I think Bruno contributes to all of those things. He wasn't great yesterday, but I don't think he was bad either. And I think the link up between him and Cavani, I think he's quite comfortable with having a striker like Cavani in front of him that does that work, that goes and addresses it, because it means that he doesn't have to go and address the centre-back. That's a good thing. I think we might see United revert back now to a diamond in future games against maybe lesser opponents, because there will be a feeling that they need to get Van der Beek back in there, that they need to control the ball better, and that they need to kind of free up the creativity in the team. And I don't think in a kind of 4-4-2 diamond or whatever you want to call it, transitional 4-3-3, I don't think we'll see anywhere Anthony Martial play on the side of that. He's not going to play on the left of that kind of formation. He might play as a 2 up top with Cavani or with Rashford or with Mason or whatnot. I don't want to see him dropped either. I mean, if you drop him, that's a problem. But it also will allow Bruno to go and do the good stuff. It allows Van der Beek to play on the side of a diamond, to be involved a little bit more, to get more games. And then you can kind of say, right, Matic at the base, McTominay at the base.
Pogba in as well, Rob. I'm delighted to see Pogba in there.
Yeah, look, I'm always someone who wants to see kind of 10 or 15 games with a player when they come back from injuries or when they come back from bad form or being out of the team. You've got to give him a run. If he's fit, he'll play. I'm not 100% convinced he's fit yet. He was probably ready for a bench role last night, and he might be only good for a bench role for the next 2 or 3 weeks. But United have got a ton of games coming up. And it might not be to say the Man City game that he's really ready to start. But it was a good sign. It's good that he's come back. And ideally, look, he still fits in your best 11. I know people say no, and they think about the running and the chasing. He had that one moment last night, didn't he, which was almost magical, where he swings a boot at it and it just goes over the bar. If that goes in the top corner, what are we saying? We're talking about this world-class player in Paul Pogba. It's up to Ole to find a way to get him in the team. And if he doesn't fit the system, doesn't fit the team, sell him. Yeah, if it doesn't work, he's not a player that you can play on the bench. Get whatever you can get for him, whether it be 80 million, 90 million, 100 million, whatever people want to pay, get the going rate and then replace him. But don't ostracize him out of the unit and say, no, he's going to just come on and off the bench, because he won't accept that. And we won't get the best from him from that. You have to make the hard choices. I do think that he'll come back into the starting 11 in the weeks ahead. And I do think that there'll be a temptation to find a way now to get Pogba, Van der Beek and Bruno in that team. Because if you get 3 players who can create from a little bit deeper, and can impact on both boxes at both ends, then we'll see a better Manchester United. It just means that Ole's got to make it work. Can Ole make it work? That's another question. And it might get to a point where if he can't make it work, he might lose his job because of that.
Yeah, I'm going to touch quickly on Pogba, like literally 20 seconds. But what I will say is that there's a clear agenda, Rob. You know, I tweeted out saying, look, I'm really excited to see Pogba back. And the agenda is ridiculous. But the facts say United with Bruno and Pogba in the same team have more points per game. They score more goals. So that's what United need to do. If United want to improve as a side, they need to find a way to get Pogba, Van der Beek and Bruno. I agree. The diamond is definitely a way to do that. I think that also suits what United have got because we don't have, I guess, a traditional right winger or someone that can play on the right. Mason can, but I think you might see that we've got 4 good forwards who can rotate for those 2 spots at the top, and it keeps them fresh as well. But Rob, I'm going to go into the questions. We've got 2 questions here. One from United Info. Thank you for sending your question in. So he's asking, we've sort of touched on this, but we're talking about the diamond here. But he's saying, would Ole have gone for the 3-5-2 if Shaw and Tuanzebe were available? And he's saying this seemed, I think we'd have done that as well. This seemed like a roll of the dice, playing 3 attackers. It was strange that he didn't go for a diamond and have more control since we only needed a draw. What could be the reasons why he didn't go for that diamond?
Well, like we said in the last episode of the Masterclass, the diamond makes you defensively weak. Yeah, it does. It hurts you because you're only really playing with one person at the base of the diamond. So you're playing a defense of 4, 1, and then 2. And those 2 have got to kind of get backwards and forwards. But say United's dream scenario of those 2 would be Pogba on the left, Van der Beek on the right. Those 2 have got to really gamble a little bit, both going forward and backwards. So it leaves you susceptible to the counter-attack. It leaves you open in the space in front of the defence. And let's be honest, if you played a diamond there and you didn't allow McTominay to track Neymar, they might have got 5 goals last night. You know, they might have got more chances. They might have got a lot more kind of productivity from their forwards than they actually did. Now, they got 3 goals at the end of it, so they're not unhappy. But it would have given United a kind of disadvantage at the start of the match. I don't think you play diamond against PSG in that way. Yeah, you can play diamond against Burnley, Southampton. You know, any team that kind of flitters around mid-table downwards, you can play diamond. You can't play diamond against Man City. They'll kill you. You play diamond against Liverpool, they'll kill you because you just are taking away that little bit of defensive protection. And as we saw with the goal against Southampton, which was from the free kick with Ward-Prowse, that came from the diamond pushing Fred's position 10 yards forward to a side and making him chase from behind. And then he fouls the player. And that leads to the goal. In a 4-2-3-1, that doesn't happen. His position is over here. He's screening a little bit more. He sees the player in front of him and he can address. And then you don't get that free kick or that foul. So that's how coaches and managers think in terms of their tactics when you're looking at the finer points. So I don't think there was a problem last night with the tactics with United. I wouldn't have played diamond in a European game like that. I don't think it lends itself to it. However, if you do want to find a way of getting Pogba in the team and Van der Beek, and you want to find a way of maybe freeing up Bruno a little bit more to be a little bit more expressive, then you go with 2. But that means also that your fullbacks have got to be better in a diamond. They've got to push on. They've got to give you width. We've talked about the problem with Wan-Bissaka today. We know Tellez likes to get forward on that left side, so he would love to overlap a diamond. He'd be into that all day, all week. Yeah, but then you've got to get the right combination as your 2 centre forwards. If it was me tomorrow, it would be Anthony Martial +1. Now, for most people, it might be Cavani +1. But for me, in that formation, you play Martial there and you say to him, you are my number 9. I'm going to stick with you by hell or high water. There's no transfer window affecting this at the moment. I'm going to live with you. I'm going to believe in you. And do you know what? I'm going to live and die by this, because if you fail, then you get out the team. Yeah, you're not playing well, but I'm going to play you into form. I'm going to trust you. And then you play a partner with him. And Cavani might suit him. Cavani can go and do the dog's work then, you see. And Martial can maybe stand off a little bit and play more 4-4-1-1, which United used to play under Fergie quite a bit, and kind of have this intermittent striker that acts like a 10, but is actually more of a 9.5 like Harry Kane does. And you could give Martial a little bit more space to operate. But let's see. I think that we'll see the diamond more in the coming weeks.
The two things I'll add about the diamond, Rob, is one, well, when we saw Matic play against Southampton, you just knew he wasn't going to play against PSG. So I think Matic just keeps that diamond. He's, for me, the most disciplined and the best player to sit at the base of that diamond. And another thing as well is whoever's playing on that right-hand side, we've seen it twice now. Against Arsenal, McTominay wanted to hold Fred's hand pretty much, so we were lopsided. And against Southampton, again, Fred was lopsided as well. So there are two issues. I still think United's best formation is 3-5-2. And when Shaw and Tuanzebe come back, I have no issue with playing three at the back at home. A lot of people saying, oh, it's defensive. That's where you get the most out of Tellez. You can play two up top. You could even go for one more defensive player in midfield because you've got this, the cover behind you with Axel or with Shaw. And I just think United look more balanced when they play that. Let's go find a question, Rob, from Aditya Prakash. Thank you for your question. Are you happy with Ollie's squad rotation this season? I think it's a good question. It's not really something I've thought about a lot. I think Ollie has actually rotated the squad pretty well. We haven't got many injuries, touch wood. I think the way he's playing Rashford, or in my view, overplaying Rashford is a bit of an issue. But on the whole, I think he's rotated the squad well. He's got options now that we've seen. And no issues now. I think the next month and a half really is when we've got 2 games a week until January. That's when we're going to really be able to judge his squad rotation.
Yeah, I had more issues with Ole's rotation last season than I do this year. And what I mean by that is last season he didn't do any rotation really at all. He was trying to repeat things over and over again. But to be fair to him, his bench was junk. Yeah, and you could see that. And people going, oh, make changes, Ole, magical changes. And really he's only got Lingard to come on, or Pereira or someone like that last season to kind of change these outward looking positions where you want to create, you want to try and, affect play with some kind of beautiful moment, and you make that change from the bench. Now Ole has options from the bench and we are seeing more what I would call effective rotation, so he's looking at his squad. He's trying to look after players a little bit more. Pogba's not been rushed back, whereas last year he would absolutely have been rushed back. I think Rashford is a problem in terms of his injuries and impact injuries and stuff to carry through matches and starting games is a problem. And really, I know that Marcus will want to play all these games, but you've got to be the big man as the manager and say, you're sitting on the bench this week, because you're not quite there. I think we need to continue seeing rotation. We've got a squad that's good enough. We've got players on the bench that need minutes. You'll see Mata come into that rotation. You'll see, I think, Brandon Williams come into that rotation. There's no doubt Luke Shaw will get his place back at some point and will be rotated with Tellez. That's the right thing to do. If you're playing a diamond, then you're going to have to try different partnerships. Like you're just saying there, that Matic is the guy that you play at the base, but he can't really play more than 1 game a week because of his age and because of his physicality. No, so that's a problem. Yeah. So you have to play McTominay there. There's going to be weeks where you might have to play Fred there. You just need someone who can put his foot on the ball and can screen and can get the play going in the right direction. So United have got 3 options there. There's going to be times even when you play a more technically gifted player in that position, depending on who you're playing against, you might play Pogba as the 6 of a base of a diamond. Not ideal, but you might do just to be able to join the dots. It does happen tactically. Everyone wants a kind of a great central defensive midfielder in there. I've talked about Tuanzebe playing maybe in that position, and I think he could. And in a diamond, I think he could. I wouldn't play him in there in a double pivot, but in a diamond, I think he could do that job. So you have to kind of look at all the options. So I think we'll see more rotation in the weeks ahead. I've got no issues with it. I want to see more rotation. That is the modern game. Look at Manchester City. Look what Pep does with his squad. He rotates. That's all he does every week. It's never the same. It's never the same personnel when he puts it together. Same tactics, same outlook, same philosophy, but different players every week. And that's a good thing. I want to see that more from Manchester United. I want to see Pellistri come into the team, maybe later on in the season. We've all seen these little snippets of Diallo making his Champions League debut for Atalanta and look very, very nice. It's only obviously a few minutes. It's as you like to say, a small sample size. So we see him for half an hour, but he looked good. You could see that he's got great talent. He might be an option from the bench. All of these things matter. And if Martial still can't find the back of the net in the next 5 or 10 games, then you have to make hard choices, don't you? Mason will come back in, no doubt. United have got good things happening. It's not all doom and gloom because they just lost 3-1. There are little things that are not right, but those little things have been there for a long time. They're historical. Ole has to solve those, because it's ultimately the small things that will get Manchester United in a position of where they want to be. It's not these kind of grand ideas. They're not far away. But Ole, he's always got this Pochettino thing breathing down his neck. We know every game that you lose, there are going to be the Ole out saying, get rid, bring in Poch. And if he gets knocked out of the Champions League against Leipzig, then contractually, that might give Manchester United the excuse to make a managerial change. That might be a bit of a shock. Like I've said to you before, we might just all wake up one day and go, oh, and it's just done. You know, we might say we didn't expect that at that moment. I think Ed Woodward is looking for that opportunity. But if Ole keeps winning, you keep your job. You know, you can't sack it's really hard to sack a manager politically that's winning games. But last night, I think he made a few errors that did contribute towards a defeat. And I think United are on the brink of going out of the Champions League. That's not me being a doomist or negative, or, you know, people will say that about me and say, oh, you know, you're just down on it. You know, for me, I'm not down on Manchester United at all. I just think going to Leipzig is a really, really, really tough challenge to go there and get any kind of result against a team that's absolutely one of the best in the Bundesliga.
100%. And what I will say as well is, my final word on, you know, I guess this Pochettino thing is that with Chelsea now hitting form, Lampard looks like he's safe. City with Pep signing a new contract. So the options for Poch are limited. And I do think, you know, possibly you could say Real Madrid with Zidane, who could be on maybe 2 or 3 games time, maybe on the brink of getting sacked. And then you've also got PSG possibly as well. But I think that's the nature of the game now, isn't it, Rob? Where if Ole has a bad result, the rumours come out again. If United lose on Saturday against West Ham, then you'll hear the Ole outers again. So, look, it seems to me that on a game-by-game basis, depending on the result, that's what the feeling in the fan base is. But, Rob, we are going live, aren't we, on Saturday after the West Ham game. We just want to say thank you to all the listeners for all your support. It's been absolutely incredible, but also your fantastic questions and your engagement with the show. That's what really makes the show an absolute joy to do. So thank you very much for that.
Yeah, we're blown away by the live interaction with you guys from Twitter and other sources. You know, it's fantastic that you're all getting involved and kind of making the show better, because you do. You know, we make these podcasts for football fans of Manchester United and anyone obviously who wants to watch. But the idea is to make this kind of 1 hour or so worth of tactical analysis for you guys. And the fact that you've all got involved really has kind of blown myself and Haider away with the kind of numbers that we're getting and people who are actually listening to us across Spotify, Apple, YouTube, and obviously with the feed on Twitter. And keep supporting us. We're really, really happy with everything that you're saying to us. And we take both the positive and the negative to try and change the show around to make it a little bit more sharper for you every week. You know, like Manchester United, we want to kind of improve our performance week to week, and we have a passion to do that. And we're just really, really happy with the way you guys are kind of pushing us on and giving us support. It's gratefully received.
Yeah, I echo Rob's words completely. Guys, make sure, as Rob said, check us out on Spotify and Apple Podcasts as well, and also on YouTube. Thank you again. We'll be going live after West Ham game. We'll confirm that, so keep an eye out for that. Thank you very much, and we'll see you all next time.